Okay. Do you need me to post the live thing? Well, I mean, it's live now. You can get to it without me posting, but I'll post. Yeah, it's that's a nice thing. It's free. Yeah. So live feed, what is today? 10:15, 2018. Control V. So there should be an announcement with the address for the live feed if you need it. Mostly though, this is going to be watching little green things as we install, right? You know, the little green line that moves slowly and then stops and then moves a little bit and then stops. Yeah.
So are we doing it, if we have a laptop that we work on, are we doing it in both places or we just?
So it's up to you.
Okay.
So if you want to do it on just on your laptop, then you don't need the virtual machine.
Oh, okay.
All right. But if you do it on here, and if you want to do it on both places, you can. All right. So let me first of all show you how to open up the virtual machine. Again, this won't matter if you're on your own laptop. But for these machines, it's VMware. So I just typed VM in there, right? In Cortana down here, I just typed VM, and then I went for Workstation Pro. Do you want me to zoom that and show it? Okay, so I'm going to zoom real quickly. So I just type in VM Workstation Pro. Now you can have this. This is VMware. You can have this at home. It comes with you have to have a license, and getting the license can be a bit of a pain. I mean, you have to have the key, and it generally will give it to you for 1 year. I actually suggest VirtualBox from Oracle because it is free, doesn't have a key that you have to worry about, and never goes away. So VMbox or VirtualBox for Oracle, and it'll run these VMs. It'll run VMware. Okay, so I actually have this. I'm going to remove it, and I'm removing it so that I can reconnect. That doesn't delete it or anything. It just removes it from the connection. So I want to show you again, go through the connection. So what you want to do is you want to open a virtual machine. If it says, so I'm going to do, it's already there. Mine's on the desktop. Let's go back out. So you go to the folder, so it's on the desktop for me. Looking for the desktop, there it is. Fall 18. Double click that, and there will be this little icon with like the three, I think it's supposed to be like 3 windows or something. If you click that and then do open. Now you may get a warning that the thing is already in use. Say take control. Well, yes, take ownership. And you should at least have this black box here, right? So we're going to get started once you've done that. A couple of things you notice. So this is power on. This little green thing up here is also power on. So these two things are power. They power on. They do the same things. These are editable, though we're not going to worry about them right now. You can make things. One of the things I often do is give it more memory. But 4 gigs isn't bad, so we're just going to leave it as is right now. And I'm going to power on the virtual machine. Now, you may get, are you moving it or copying? So, all right, so it doesn't matter really if you moved it or copied it. Just do one of them. Where it could matter is typically when you're making your own VMs, you need to own the copy of Windows, right? The fact that you have one copy of Windows. I think they let you copy Windows 3 times. Is that true? That you can have 3 copies of when you buy Windows, you get like 3 installs. I think that's right. I don't know that for sure. Yeah.
Sorry, I think I.
So click on that one.
This one.
Yeah. And take ownership. And then I started mine, right? So it gives you a couple of dialogues. Did you copy it? Did you move it? If you're worried about copyright, move it is better. All right, and then, but all of our things are institution copies, so it doesn't matter. And then this is just telling you what's connected, right? So you can, it'll read your virtual, it'll read your thumb drives, it'll read all these things. Okay, so I'm going to zoom down a little bit. Okay, so mine has a really pretty picture. Might or might not. And then it goes black when you don't touch it for a while. So if you click into this, everybody is me, and I'm sorry, I didn't set up the virtual machine. If I set it up, I usually make that student. So, and the password is password, the p@ssw0rd1. You'll get used to that. It's sort of the default password for everything. Yeah.
Okay, it's not doing. I lost it. Like the same thing.
Give it a minute and see what happens. We'll see if it comes back. What?
What was the password?
Password. p@ssw0rd1. And it may, so I'm going to look. If it doesn't, if yours don't come back in a moment, well,
I think it's present.
yeah, it is for a while, but sometimes it'll freeze for a minute. So how many are frozen? Just 2, 3 of them? Can you kill it?
Here we go.
Oh, yours is coming back. I wonder if yours will come in a minute. Why are they so slow? You know, I think sometimes what makes them slow is that in the background, Windows is downloading updates. And so the resources get over. Give it another couple minutes, and then if that fails, I would do a Control-Alt-Delete. Did you kill it there? No.
Just right, that one, password,
Yeah, the password is P, actually right here too. P at SSW0RD1. This is again just for the virtual machine. Now, if your thing is like a postage stamp in there, I'll zoom up for this. There is under View, Auto Size. I did Auto Fit Guest, and it'll make it stretch. So you're coming up, but I think it wants to update. It's one of the things that's happening on your side. So if you go to View, P at SSW0RD1. Did yours come? Yours came. No, yours is fine. So hers came. Everybody's come back for yours.
I'm trying.
Do okay. Let's see if it comes back. That's for pausing it. Why is it? Give me a few minutes now. All right. So you can do that. As I said, the other thing, this is what I usually suggest, is going into full screen mode, because that makes it so you don't have to worry about the two toolbars. Without this, without the two toolbars, it's sometimes easy to get confused between this one and this one. They're not the same. This is the underlying machine. This is the machine in the virtual machine. And it's fairly easy to get confused between the two, but if you maximize, you've only got the one. It's basically, you're just in the virtual machine. It looks like it's your Windows, that's it. So I would advise that. You getting nothing there? Let's do a Control-Alt-Delete.
Actually, did that.
And it didn't do anything.
This is the result when I came back.
Did you reopen it or it never closed?
I did here in the inbox.
Let's see what happens when we go right away. Was it already there? It's already there. Just do this one.
Here?
No, this one.
Oh.
Let's hope it opens. Still taking a long time. Sure, let's start the computer. You could do that too. Maybe give that a shot. I'm not sure what's, and if that doesn't work, what we'll do is maybe download it again.
Okay, I'll try to restart it real quick.
Mine is just black.
So
It started, oh.
it'll go black if you don't touch it for a while. Don't worry about that. So I'm almost ready to do the installs. Is there anyone else having problems just on this part? Okay. On the network thing, you can share or not. It really won't share even if you say so. Okay. So we just have Edge. If you want to, one of the first things you could do is go and get Chrome or Firefox. Edge is okay for some things. There are some things Edge does that I like. I really think this is a lie. Edge doesn't support a lot of plugins, so it'll crash on a lot of sites. It has some neat features, though, like it'll let you annotate web pages, and some things like that. Nonetheless, if you want to, you can go download the others. I usually do get Chrome or Firefox. All right, so, but I'm going to leave it in Edge here. And I'm going to kill this because I'm going to do the zoom inside the box. The other zoom was outside. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look for SQL Server Express download. And we want the 2017 and we want the downloads. So you could go directly to there if you want. So I did, yeah, 2017 is the most current one. We want the Express. Now, a couple of things I'll just mention, and I'll hang here for just a second. The developer is also free. I don't think we should download it for the virtual machine because it's way big. But if you want it at home, this is a complete enterprise level version of SQL Server for free, and it never expires. It's not licensed for use in your like a business, but it is licensed for you to learn on, basically. And it does have all of the features that SQL Server has, which are a lot. But this takes gigs, and this takes megs. So we're going to do the Express. The Express is always free, and it has everything we need. Yeah.
That's not which website.
This is Microsoft. What I did, again, is it's Microsoft.com SQL Server downloads. And what I did is I just searched SQL Server downloads.
Mine's working, by the way.
Finally?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So just restarting, did it?
Actually, I didn't even restart.
It just started working. Huh. We want the Express. Well, give me a second. You're waiting. I talk a lot. If you want to go ahead, you can, but you might be on your own at a time. So I'm going to download the Express. I'm going to run it. You could save it and run it, but I'll just run it.
Is this the same?
Yes. So I'm going to do yes. You always have to give permission if you don't, and that's the part you couldn't do on the underlying machine, is give that permission. So it should pop up with a installer. I think we're going to do basic. I'm just looking. I think we'll just do the basic install. Because this is just for the engine, we'll have to install the SQL Server Management Studio as well. And we don't need, now if you're doing this like with the developer and stuff, I would definitely go through the custom. There are lots of choices there, including whether you want Python and R included in your server and all sorts of other things like that. But the SQL Server Express Edition doesn't have those things, and the basic should do just fine. So, as with all installations, you accept the agreement or you end. If you want to read it, you can. I never have. I've probably given away my eldest children several times. There is some debate, actually, as to whether those agreement rules are legal, but generally they. I would let it go to the default. You know, where it's the install location, I would just go for the default. If you go somewhere else, you're going to have to redo everything. You know, if you go to another path, you have to path everything yourself. So, Oh, I don't need to browse. That was just, we'll just leave it there. And then I'm going to install. Now, hopefully it won't take too long. You're stuck? It won't run at all? Let's
I
hope it
did,
stops.
but I wasn't sure.
Sometimes these machines are really pudgy and slow, but usually it's only usually temporary. I'm not sure of a good way to cure it other than to like close it and come back. I'm not sure. So I don't know, this could take, they've actually improved this quite a bit. It's usually a lot faster than it used to be. And it's working. I mean, one of the things I've found last couple quarters is that even though a lot of us are hitting them at once, Microsoft has pretty good servers.
Mine said computer restart is required.
If it does say to restart, do.
Sorry,
Just within
close.
week. Go ahead and close. Okay. Come down. So down. This is in the virtual machine one.
Yeah.
So just go down there and restart.
Here.
And then just restart.
And then you restart just the virtual machine.
It does restart just the virtual machine. So if it does say to restart, do. What are you doing? Smart screen. What are you doing? Oh. Right. And then you just do Oh, you're doing that on the underlying machine.
You don't do anything else here yet.
You need to run it on our side, but yeah. That's
If you can do masters, do you have any idea what is working?
What doesn't make sense to me is why some require a restart and some don't. When it says oops, so I'm going to hold here for a minute until some more of you are here. If you want to move ahead, if you get to this point and you want to move ahead, you want to install Ssms, which will take you to the web page, actually.
What does Ssms stand for?
SQL Server Management Studio.
Oh, that's the.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have all these, Microsoft, it's all SS for SQL Server Integration Services, SQL Server Business, Business Information, SQL Server, etc. This is SQL Server Management Studio, and it's the GUI.
How do we want to open it?
Probably just the edge. So I'm going to hang here for a minute. Are you still
I'm also
circling?
restarting.
Yeah.
So it's not allowed.
I'm just wondering if I can check.
But I'm glad you're doing
Yeah, it helps me. very good decisions to make.
We're on the same level. Oh, you got it on your Netflix, the SQL? Yeah.
We already have.
That was like 20 pounds. No, it's just like, it's more. Yeah. That's why
And I'll help you install it if it doesn't. Anyone else? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little ahead. Should I accept? Is it this one?
Yeah, do the top one. You're ahead. Yeah. I'm gonna do that in a moment. So you guys, I guess I could do it and then back up and help the people that don't.
So I just do everything all over again now when we started?
You shouldn't have to. Let's see. Do you have? Let's look. Do you have put it down here? And just double click there. Does it say yes? It should take us right back to where it was. Yeah, you have to do it all. So I think it'll come.
Are you trying to do that? I wonder if I make it.
If you have to restart, you can find the installer in downloads, in the folder downloads. Should be there. Well, you can always go back.
No, it was before that. Yeah.
I'm not sure, or you can go back to the website and rerun it again. We'll get everybody installed before the day is out. So I'm going to do the SSMS. You want to do Edge, and it just gives you a web page. And basically, you want the SQL Server Management Studio 17.9. They used to just install it with it. I don't know why they make you go get it now. There is a preview for 18, but let's not do that. So it should give us, yeah, there it is, run. And it should open up another installer in a minute. Actually, is it behind this installer? No. I'm going to give it a minute. Did you guys get another installer? Good. You're just still ready? Oh, do run. Yeah. Just do a search for Microsoft SQL Server Express. Just search for it. SQL Server Express. Yes. And then, has anybody got the installer for the, yeah?
It's gonna be a problem. Just for us.
Go ahead and do run. See what we get.
Well, mine just took me back.
And I clicked on the window to finder icon and the one.
Oh,
Seems to work fine.
I'm not getting anything now.
It just came up to me.
Oh, there it did just now. So
Yes.
just do run. Let's see if it works.
It circled me back to do the same thing.
Oh, it did.
So I've completed that one. I should be getting another window. Oh, there it is. So hopefully you get this window where you can install the SQL Server Management Studio. If it does say restart, just didn't restart.
No.
Had you restart?
Part of the reason why Microsoft requires so many restarts is that the way they store things in the registry.
I hope
This one here.
No, don't restart the actual machine.
And then connect now.
Did you download it? You said run it. All right, so
No, you had it right.
Oh, here. Oh, I see. Thanks.
Oh, so where do you go? Yeah. So if you save it, then go to documents, download.
I don't even know.
So, I can put it to solid right now. We just talked.
So every time someone comes in,
No, that would be
email. Yeah. Like, trying to get it to network, just like. Or someone. Like we have to like. It's like we can just like.
They probably just took like one more. I haven't had.
But they do teach classes here and
I'm good at all this stuff.
She's here at community.
That's visual studio. You have this
Icon
server.
I didn't.
you can, but the return always goes inside.
Right, so like let's say I return like right here, function is calculate total monthly rent, and then I want to return the rent variable.
Yeah,
which I-
we need like
If I
the
create that
SQL server,
inside,
but as soon as you're
yeah,
how would I
done.
access it later?
So
Yeah, and I'm
you would, what you do is you give, you
Well,
assign
neighbor.
a function.
Okay. I'm not worried about that.
You assign it,
So when this is installed, I will show you a little bit what it looks like and how we'll be working on things. So log back in.
Wait, is that function total monthly rent? Let's begin. Do you always have to sign?
no, you don't, you did.
Did you just say? Did you just say pending? Or no, that was
What, here? Or here?
here.
I don't, because I think I would say it's 6 months.
No. But you say pending like a main process. What about pending?
Yeah.
That works? Yeah, that works.
If you have SSN,
Okay, so basically, I would either need to say like temp total monthly rent or assign this to something.
He did it.
Yes,
but
that's
it
right.
was
And then that variable would equal that
Whatever the return value is, yeah.
It's like, comment.
My middle.
Yeah,
Like I know this return thing is important.
So that's like, that'll become more important when we get to classes and stuff, because you're creating an instance of an object from the class, and so the class is always going to return statement because just like, for example.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. This is kind of actually like hard out. I thought it might be helpful to write down my process.
No, that's super helpful. When I was teaching myself, I was in the book where we have actually illustrated talks about like how just writing out what you want to do first, and then like moving from there, just making a flow chart of what you want to do. And then putting that like makes sense into a formula and stuff like that can really help you tease it out because it starts to just kind of blur together and have that.
Yeah, sometimes you're like, you're like,
Yeah, and I put a bunch of comments in my first time. This, I don't think it's about
I'll show you where to go. Okay. So was it a restart automatic?
I wonder, I at first maybe it was just me, maybe it was slow. And then I started asking other people, these 30 minutes videos that they assign take you about 2 hours to do. And everybody's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh.
Oh, this is the class, and then you.
But I have 2 of his classes, so I have 2 videos, 2 discussions, 2 assignments. So.
what is going on like after you say the variable was is eligible, like he's like the rental apartment, and then I made a function that returns is eligible. Will that automatically modify this variable, or do I still need to say like is eligible equal to function? I still need to say, right? It's not going to automatically. So you're asking like how you set the local variable and the variable that has a percentage. Right. Because 3, I think it's because 3 is what you're
kind of, but actually I'm saying, what if you just print it?
Oh,
Yeah, without. Oh, no, so actually.
I'm hoping that.
oh, then it's going to read it from the, it's definitely going to read it from the.
So if you had to restart, you might have to go get it again.
Because you never.
I would have to say.
So you might have.
It's kind of cool. Our assignment is like we have to use like all these prompts and basically determine if someone would be eligible. Yeah, so like, that's all really, and then you get discount. Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah, she's doing that. You're good. So it's not going perfectly smoothly, but it's going relatively smoothly. And you got yours okay, and you're good, and you're good.
I restarted, so.
You might need to go back. So just start not the express. Well, so we need the you have the did you run it? Did it succeed? Yeah. Before we do that,
What do you get to a point where, yeah, I was like definitely be there. And then also like I usually for so imagine if you have a question. So like say our people are she was doing most of these so like that Thursday I was right. And I think that maybe that's figuring out. Yeah. I just recognize those terms.
You did? Right?
Yeah. So you just no. Oh yeah. So one of the ways you know that you've got it. So I'm gonna kill this I'm going to close that. I'm going to close this. One, it should say that it's completed. In your files, there should be, you go down here and there's Microsoft SQL Server 2017. There's all this stuff, which you can kind of ignore for right now. But you should have a thing that says Microsoft SQL Server Tools, and in there should be a SQL Server Management. So there should be a SQL Server Tools in your, if you go here and then come down, see how it says Microsoft SQL Server Tools? And if you open that, it has Profiler and Management. Management is what we want. All those other things are neat, but we're pretty well going to ignore them.
It's the same.
Yeah, so if you have the tools and if you drop the tools, you have the management.
That's basically our GUI.
That's the good. Yeah.
Install stuff.
Give it a moment. It's actually on the hardest part. Yeah, so you want to do, I'll show you. Did you have to restart? So I will open it in a minute. I'm just sort of waiting. Some of you are already there. How many are still installing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're still installing 6. Do you guys want me to open it or wait till your installs are done? Wait till the installs are done. Okay. Yeah. Installing is always a tricky business. All of these machines are supposed to be identical. And the virtual machines are supposed to be identical, and yet it happens differently on every machine. Is it installing?
If you're in the screen, you can just click inside it.
You do a space when you do that. I know it's sort of you do space. I do space. I do space there when I define the function. Just like I don't like that. Oh no, I
Basically,
I think it's totally notional.
when if you're trying to get into SQL Server, you just do Database Engine Connect. Windows User, Windows Authentication.
Yeah.
You're set. You're getting there.
But you're so good. We can't.
So
Local host.
or just leave it with it.
Okay.
Local
And then connect.
Like even for this like I made like a box stuff. Like first I made like a real
So we should have.
Which am I supposed to?
He just told me that.
Yeah, we should know what happened. There's an outbreak.
But that one was on. No, like the.
Yeah, you should have.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, single server.
You know, that's what.
So you're done.
So this is how I got it.
We're done. We're starting. You guys are in, and so most of you are in. If you want, you can just do that.
So basically, I think a lot of YouTube you just get photos, like nice photos that you, and then crop those so they don't look like the same. You know,
So there's just a couple to go.
and I made it like fully responsive, so for now,
Once you're there, you can just do connect. And I'll go over it in a second.
I mean, it has to be right now. Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
So this video will be quite boring for the most part as I walk around and help people. So 1, 2. How many are still going? 1, 2. 3.
Yeah.
So I'll start in a moment. I'll start, but I'll help you guys that are a little behind when you get there. So SQL Server Management Studio, as I said, if you look in there, it should be there. You should also be able to get it by doing SQL and then M for management. So SQL Server Management Studio. And again, I will help anyone that needs help when they catch up. For what it's worth, this is the hardest of the 3 installs. MySQL and Mongo are easier. I'm zoomed, so everything's big, and it takes it a moment here. For what it's worth, the SQL Server Management Studio is a shell of Visual Studio. I don't know if any of you have ever played with Visual Studio, but it's the same programming shell. And in fact, if you have Visual Studio, you can use it as a front end instead. All right, so you get this, and the reason you get this is that the Management Studio is not SQL Server. It is a front-end client, right? The server is running in the background all the time. And I might show you where you can shut it off if you really want to shut it off. But it runs in the background all the time. This is just a front end. This is just a GUI. Turning this off does not turn off SQL Server. Starting this doesn't start SQL Server. It's running in the background. This is the name of your current machine. If you can also always substitute just localhost. Localhost is actually localhost won't work. You did work on yours, though, right?
It did, yeah.
Did you download more than the?
I did it, the developer.
You did the developer. For this one, what you would want is /SQL Express. So you can always do the machine name SQL Express, or you can do /SQL Express. They should have the same meaning. When that goes away, that means you're connected. And this shows you some of the objects over on this server. So it's going to be pretty empty for right now, but I'll go through a couple of things. When you open databases, we really don't have any. We actually have 4, but there are 4 databases that I'm going to tell you not to mess with. These are system databases. Are you there yet? Okay. So you're already in. Yes, okay. You're close. So just for your information, every relational database has system databases. What the system databases do is they keep track of information about information. All right. So what the master database keeps track of is what databases are on the server, because you can have multiple databases on the server. It also keeps track of the users, the server level users. Keeps track of server level permissions and things like that. If the master is corrupted, your SQL Server is dead. You need to reinstall. So don't mess with it. Couple of so as I said, every relational database has system databases. One of the rules of a relational database is that every piece of information, even information about information, what they call meta information, is stored in tables. Everything is stored in tables. Everything is stored in databases. The advantage of that is you can query the structure of a database as well as the content of a database. So if you want to know what tables a database has, you can do a query that shows the tables. If you want to know what columns are in a table, you can do a query that will show that. The model database is just a template. If you create a database without giving it any other parameters, you get what's in the model. So if you were a database professional, you might modify the model. You'd say like you wanted every database to have a log table. You could add a log table to the model, and every time you create a new database, it would have a log table. Does that make sense? The model is just a template for your additional databases. MSDB is a Microsoft database that keeps track of events, calendars, schedules. One of the things that we're not going to bother with, but if you were a database administrator, you'd want to automate as much as possible so you don't have to spend hours maintaining your database. This keeps track of all of the schedules and events and what's supposed to run when, things like that. And then the TempDB is really what it says is a scratch database. When when SQL Server needs to run things in the background, it create temp tables and stuff, it does it in the TempDB. So those are the 4 that are here. There's a security folder. This is a folder for the server level security, like logins. You log into the server and then you can go to the database, And there's other stuff there. There's some server objects, backup devices if you're for backup and restore. Replication for making copies of your database to keep, so you have multiple copies running that are synchronized. Not sure what Polybase is, that's new. And then a lot of management tools, including logs. And this is the Express version. So the Express version does have some limitations. It doesn't have nearly as many tools as like the developer one. It also has limits on size. They're not horrific. I think no one database can be bigger than 4 gigabytes, which is a fairly decent database. But if you're doing a commercial database, it could get into the terabytes or even petabytes. Yeah. So there are limitations here. So this is SQL Server. Or how many? You're there now too. Okay, good. Everybody there except you, right?
I'm not there either.
You're not there either. You're still installing. I wonder why it's taking so long on your system.
The Wi-Fi there is.
Oh, that could be. because these at least are connect to a actual internet port. All right, so I'm going to make a database. We may today, I think I'll probably repeat this more than once, but I'll just show you. I'm going to show you the graphic way to do it, and I'll also show you the SQL way to do it. I'm kind of expecting you to use the graphic at this point. But if I want a new database, I can click on database, I can right click, and I can do new database. Okay, and it gives me a dialog box that lets me set the thing. Mostly all you're probably going to need to worry about are the database name. Let me call this one bakery, because we did that one bakery thing. You can. I mean, you can do this with me or not. This is not something we're going to actually use, but it's just to show you. Couple of things about the database that I will show you. There are 2 files minimum. There can be more than 2 files, but there are 2 files at a minimum. The first one is the primary file, and that has all the data in it. It also has all the table structures. It has everything that you think of as the database, pretty much. And then there is a log file. And what the log file does is it keeps track of every transaction that happens since your last backup, if you've ever backed up. The advantage of the log file, if you set it up right, is that if you have a total disaster, you can restore from your backups, and then you can restore from the log anything that wasn't in that last backup. So the log is useful. These files can get quite large, and you can have multiple files. We're not going to mess with that, but you can break up the, data logs into multiple files. This is the actual physical path, which is goes to program files, Microsoft SQL Server, MSQL 14, SQL Express, MS SQL, and then data. I'll show you that. If you want to move the database, you have to detach it. I'll show you that later, and move both files. It won't be happy if you move just the data or just the log. You want both. This is also a really stupid place to put these files, but we're going to let them be there. I mean, in real life, you would want to move them somewhere else, and you would never want your log file on the same computer as your data files. Because if your computer crashes and your log file is with your data, then you're just screwed because you've lost your log too. So you don't want to do that, but we'll let it be. I'm not going to do much with these. This is just show and tell today. These are options. There are lots of options you can set. Again, for the most part, we're going to leave them alone. We'll just take, all of these are written in the template. These are the defaults. And you can do a lot of different things with them. Anybody have any idea what they mean by collation? Just curious. It's not a... So collation is the language, the cultural thing. So the default, because of where we installed it and what's on our computer, will be for American English, right? And that means that when it deals with currency, it'll give you dollars. If we did it in London, it would give us pounds. If we did it in France, it would give us euros. And it would also, if we did it in France, it would give us French as the default language. So it is actually international, despite being American English as default. You can, it's in Unicode, so you can add any language that you want. But if you look at this, there's a lot. I don't know why there's so many Albanian versions. And then Arabic, and then it goes on and on and on and on. But the fact that it's in defaults to American English doesn't mean that you can't enter other languages. It just means that the default will be American English. All right. The recovery model is simple. If you want to actually use the log, you would need to change it to full. If it's simple, it doesn't log every event. If you make it full, it does. And there's all of that. And then file groups if you wanted to break it up into more files, which we're not going to do. So in general, all you have to do is give it a name and do OK. That'll go away. And now we have a bakery over here. And a bakery has a whole bunch of sub folders too. It has its own security. Every database has its own security as well as the security on the server. Tables is where we're going to spend most of our time, right? Because we want to create tables. Most of these others we will kind of ignore because there's a lot of stuff you can do with those. One of the things about SQL Server is it's a fairly complicated database system. It gives you lots of options, right? Probably more options than anything else, but maybe Oracle. Possibly Postgres, too. So let's say I want to create a table. I'm going to show you a quick way to create a table. So I'm just going to do table, table. And it gives you this grid. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm actually going to show you 3 ways to make tables. And you can choose what you want. I think the middle one would probably be the best one, but we'll do this. So if let's say this is for customer. I'm going to do customer ID. I'm going to make the data type for that an integer. So they give you this list of data types. You can kind of type. You can do int. I'm not going to allow nulls because I'm going to right-click on this and set primary key. Okay, so this is now the primary key. It's an integer. If I want it to be auto number, there are properties down here. Again, I don't expect you to remember all this, but I'm going to go down to where it says identity specification. It says no. If I click this little thing, is identity, I can change that to yes. And what that does, it's a pain. What that does is it makes this an auto number. It'll just auto count. You don't have to do that, especially since we're not entering tons of data. You know, you don't have to make it an auto number. So what I did is I did it as a customer ID. It's an integer data type. Do you guys clear what integer is? It's a whole number, no decimal parts, right? And then I went down to properties. And to see that properties, you need to be in, well, it's actually you just need to be in that column, which we are. I went down, scrolled down until I saw identity specification, which looked like this, except it said no. And then I clicked that, said is identity, and I said yes. And it's going to count, start at 1 and count by ones. You can change that if you want. So this is customer. Let's just add another couple fields. Again, the idea here is just to show you one way to make a table, and then we'll make another way. So I'll do customer name, which you could break up. When I do customer name, I'm going to do invar car 50. Does anybody have an idea what that might be? Right. It is variable character. Right now it has 50 characters. You can change that number up to 255. 255 is the max for a normal database field.
What is variable character?
What?
What is variable character?
All right, so there's 2 ways to store. And so there's character and there's variable character. If you do car or in car, anybody know what the N stands for? This is just Microsoft. It's not most of the others. For whatever reason, N is Unicode. If you just use car, it's going to be ASCII, and then you can't enter other things. But if you do in car, it's Unicode, and you can enter any Unicode character. So you can enter any character of any language in the world, even Elvish. They have Elvish and Vulcan. Unicode is a really big set. There's room in it. And people that make these kinds of things tend to be nerdy. So in means Unicode. Car means fixed. So if I said in car 50, it would write 50 spaces to the disk for every value, even if I only wrote 4 characters in it. It would always write the same number of characters to the disk. Right? That's what fixed means. So if you say it's fixed is actually a good idea for some things. If you're going to use like state field, you're going to keep track of the states, and you want to do it as 2 characters, then in car 2 makes perfect sense because you're limiting it to 2. It'll always print 2. But if it's something that could vary a lot, you're going to write the same amount no matter what you write in it. So there's a lot of waste, could be potentially a lot of waste space on your disk. Varchar, or in Varchar, this is really a noisy thing. Basically, figures out how many characters there actually are and writes that to the disk. So you might think that's always the best, but there's a trade-off, and it really depends on your system which way you want to go. Again, we're not going to worry about it much. I would just use it in Varchar mostly. But the trade-off is Varchar takes processing time because it always has to calculate the length. Just right-click on. Did you have a new database? You have to have a database first. So Varchar uses processing time, and car uses disk space. Which matters more depends on your system and what you're doing. You know, if you have to calculate, if you're getting hundreds of thousands of entries per minute, calculating that disk space could slow things down. On the other hand, how much disk space can you afford to waste? You know, it's sort of it's a trade-off. You have to figure that out. Allow nulls. Does anybody know what the allow nulls would mean?
Is it required?
Is it required or not? So if you uncheck it, that means it is required. It's kind of a reverse. You think checking it makes it required, but it's actually the opposite. Unchecking it makes it required. And if it's required, that means you cannot leave when you're entering data. You have to put data in that column. And you should be careful about that. You want the data that you need to be required, but you don't want to require data that's optional because it could be a problem. So I'm just going to do customer email, and I think that'll be. And then I would do probably in Varchar again. You see that in Varchar max? I would not use it very much, but it's good for like if you're storing documents or notes. In Varchar max will allow you to store up to 2 gigabytes of data, but you cannot retrieve, you can't search it. You can retrieve it, but you can't search it. It's not stored in the table. All that's stored in the table is a pointer that points to where elsewhere in the file it's stored. So you can retrieve it, but you can't search its contents.
If you select that option, then can you just change the max to 50? Like, just type it in, is that okay? Or?
You may, but why not just do the Varchar? And it doesn't have to be 50. Like if I wanted to give more for the email, I could change this to like 150. In order for it to be stored in the table itself, your max is 255. I could go into there's a structural reason for this, but I don't know if it's worth going into. The maximum size of any row in a data table in a SQL Server is 14K. And it's because of the way they've broken up the storage. The linked lists, actually. All right. So if we save this, it gives us a chance to name it. And we'll do customer. Okay, so that's one way to make a table. And if I look now under tables here, I have to refresh. But now there will be a table customer. And when you open up the table, there's all sorts of things under it. Notice it has customer with a key, customer name, customer email. And if I, way over here, if I slide over a little, you can see that it also has what the data types are. That's really useful when you're querying things. All right, does that make sense? And once you've created it, you can close it if you want.
Did you call it table one?
No, I called it customer. Oh, the DBO? So right click on tables. You saved it, right? Yeah. So refresh.
Oh, there we go.
So a couple of things about what you do over here is not necessarily connected to this. You often have to refresh to see the results of your work. And there's when this was originally put out in 2005, the two things were intimately connected, but it kept crashing. So Microsoft just cut them apart, said that it was a feature, not a bug. So what you do over here doesn't instantly reflect over here without a refresh. So that's one table. I'm going to show you another way to make a table and then a third way to make a table.
Is there a refresh button?
You need to refresh at the level of the folder, which is weird. There might be a refresh button, but it doesn't work generally. So if I go to the top, there's connect. This says refresh, but it won't refresh at the table level. You have to basically go down to tables to refresh, and then right click and refresh. For Mac users, one of the things that'll drive you nuts about most Microsoft software is there's a lot of menus that only appear on a right click, which you're not used to doing if you're a Mac user. I'm going to show you how to do this with SQL. I'm not expecting you to do this, but I just want to show it. So this is actually how I would do it, but then I have a lot of practice with SQL. Let me also make the font bigger. You guys don't have to do this, but I'm going to go to options. Going to go to font, text editor. Well, actually, I just want to do font. Fonts and colors. I guess I don't care that it's Consolas, but let's make it about 24. I'm also going to add line numbers, I think, all languages, line numbers. I can show you how to do that again if you want. But that was just, I mean, mostly for display, so it's big enough for you guys to see. So I'm going to do create table. Yeah. You do it for tools, options. Again, it doesn't matter right now, but tools, options. Oh, and this, yeah, so tools, options, and then.
The question is how you get to where you're typing in.
Oh, but I think you have it up. And then I just did fonts and so up above in environment, fonts and colors. If you want to change your font size, if you go to text editor, all languages, you have line numbers. Just click on new query. So let me kill it.
Does capitalization matter in SQL?
It does not. So I'm going to do new query. See, there's a button up there that says new query. If you're doing that, you're already in the query window, though, it looks like. So new query gives you the query window. And yeah, SQL is a nice language because it is not case sensitive. It's one of the only languages I know that is not case sensitive. So I'm going to do create table sale. We're not going to keep the whole table, but I'll just make it so there's a link to customer. And it takes 2 parentheses. All right. So we're going to define sale. And I'm going to give it a sale ID. It's going to be an integer. Identity, again, is that auto number. And I'm going to say it's a primary key. And I spelled identity wrong. Identity. Get an identity. I'll give it a sale date. And one of the, I'll give it date time as the type. I could also give it default. I think it's a current. I don't know that this will work. That might or might not work.
I have a question.
Yeah.
That identity one, what does that stand for?
So this is auto number. Start at 1, count by ones. You could also, if you wanted to start at 1,000, you could do that.
Okay, so just assign that.
Yeah. What else do we want in there? So I'm just going to do customer ID int, and I'm going to say it's a foreign key, and it references customer ID. So that's how you do a foreign key in SQL. I'm not sure if timestamp might give us an error. I think I might want like that. Customer ID int foreign key references customer ID. Interesting. Let's see if that'll make a table. I'm not sure about the default current timestamp. It worked. Okay. So a couple of things about it. Again, I'm not going to expect you to do this. We will do some SQL, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like. We're just creating a table. One of the nice things about SQL as a language is that it is fairly straightforward. What are you trying to do? We're trying to create a table. So we're going to create a table, we give it a name. We give the columns what we want the columns to be. We give them the data types. This is a part that takes a long time to learn. There are hundreds of, well, not hundreds, at least dozens of data types in SQL Server, but 90% of them you're only going to use in specialized instances. Most of the time you're going to use in-car, var-car, int, or possibly currency and date. There's about a half dozen that you use a lot. So you don't have to memorize all of them. And we'll talk about them a little bit more here. Date time returns the current date and the time. You could also separate them if you want. You could return the date as one column and time as another column, because date is a type, time is a type, but also date time is a type. Does that make sense? And the customer ID is an integer and it's on table, so that's what you do, and it's a foreign key, and you have to say with the foreign key what it references, and it references the customer table, and inside the customer table, the customer ID. If I refresh over here, now I have 2 tables. I have customer and sale. Okay. And if I open up the customer and the columns, it shows, I have two keys here. The black one is the primary key, and the other key is the foreign key. Right, so it has a little icon for those. Yeah. We need another parentheses. After this is an opening, we need to close it. Parentheses. We have to run it. So to execute this, you have to execute it. Just writing it won't do it. So you have to, actually, because it's the only thing you don't have to highlight it. I'm used to highlighting it because it'll only run what's highlighted, or if you don't highlight anything, it runs the whole script. And up here, there's a little execute, right? If I execute it now, I'll get an error because the table already exists. Okay, so this is another way to create your tables. Again, this is how I would do the whole database when I'm setting it up. But I've had lots of practice with that.
Is there an advantage to doing it this way?
I think it's faster, more efficient,
Okay.
and it gives you more control. And once you have the script, you can, if you make a change, you just rerun the script. You just drop the database and rerun the script. There's a lot of efficiencies there, actually. And if you want to recreate this database on another database machine, you can just copy the script and run it. Okay. I'll show you in a moment. We'll add another database just from script, and I'll show you how easy that is. So I want to show you a third way to do this, and this is actually the way I would expect you to do it in your groups or when you're building the instance, which we're obviously not going to start today, but we'll start on Wednesday. So I'm going to do a database diagram. So I'm going to right-click on that. So it's over here, database diagram. This is for bakery. Every database has its own diagram ability. I'm going to click on New Database Diagram. And it tells me that I don't have all the objects I need. It's always going to say this the first time, and you say yes. We do want the stuff that we need. It has customer and sale. You can see the tables they've already made. And then I'm going to close this. And so notice it shows my customer table. It shows my sale table. The link here is like the crow's foot. This is supposed to be the infinity sign. It looks like a chain link. But it's, and then the key points to the one side. It does not show any FKs for foreign keys. No, so database diagrams, right? So you've opened up the thing, right click on database diagrams, new database diagram. Yeah.
If we can put our diagrams here, what's the point of writing them in Visio or?
All right, one of the reasons why I would say doing it in Visio first, I was actually going to get to that.
Sorry.
When we do MSQL, I'm going to let you build your diagram in MSQL, not MSQL, MySQL. Because the problem with this is that it actually creates the database when you create the diagram. So I'm going to add a table into this, and it will actually add it to the database. That is a really bad idea, I think, if what you're doing is designing, right? Because you're messing with the database itself while you're doing it rather than doing it independent of the database. MySQL in Workbench allows you to do it and not make it a part of the database until you decide you're ready. So, but this is nice for building the database. So I'm going to say add table, and the way I get that is I just right-click in the white. I'm going to add table. No, not add. New table. New table. What do we want to do? Let's do like product. And I'm not going to put everything in here. I just want to do like a product. Now notice what it does is it gives you a scene a lot like when I say create table.
Mhm.
And it is exactly like that, right? So I can say product ID, and I could make it an integer. I'm not going to allow nulls. If I right click, I can set the primary key. Over on the side, there are the properties that were at the bottom before. And I can go to the identity specification and change that to yes if I want it to be auto-numbered. You don't have to auto-number them for this. I'm going to give the product name, and that'll be in varchar. And then I will do the product price. I'm not going to do all the fields that you probably should have. It is not, nothing in SQL is case sensitive, although you can make it so. You can't make the SQL commands case sensitive, but you can make it so that the product name, the column names are case sensitive. This one I'm going to do, there's a couple of options that you have here. There's small money, there's money, or you can do decimal. So I would probably just do money, but some people get upset by money. Not just because it's money, but the money data type in SQL Server stores 4 decimal places. We're used to 2. So if it drives you crazy that there's 4 decimal places, you could use decimal instead and specify how many places. I don't know why it stores 4. Banks go out a lot farther than that. So 4 isn't just for banks go out for as many decimal places as there are. The famous, probably urban legend of the person that wrote code to steal all the fractions of pennies. He got rich.
When you select that decimal, there's 18.
Right. So when you do decimal, you can set the parameters if you want. Money works fine, but if you wanted, right now there's 0 decimal places. If we did, now 18 is probably overkill because you aren't going to be that big, and you can set that to smaller. So the prices for these are probably never. Would you ever have $100 cake? Maybe. Let's do 4. What that means is that there are. Well, no, we probably want 6 because that'd be 1,000. That'd allow us up to 1,000. The way that decimal those numbers work is that there are going to be 6 total digits, 2 of which will be on the other side of the decimal point.
2 of which.
So out of the 6, 2 of them will be on the right side of the decimal point. So this is the total digits and how many to the right side of the decimal point. It's not 6 digits plus 2. It's 6 total with 2 of them is, yeah.
If we were doing it with SQL, the 3,
You would still do, so you would do the, where the type is, you would write it as, you would just write this as, instead of date time, you would do, I'm going to do this, but we'll change it back. Decimal 4 or 6-2. Whatever precision you want, yeah. This will give an error right away because you can't do a current timestamp with. But that's how you would do. All right, let's go back to the diagram. All right. I think that's all I'm going to do for this one, and then we'll do like a sale detail one. Sure. What did you need to know about?
The decimal part. Did you delete?
I deleted it just now. I went back to date time. But if you were doing decimal, here, let's do a comment. Well, so if you were doing decimal, let's say, I'm just going to comment this. And then you could do like not null if you want to make sure it's required. Double dashes, by the way, are a comment. I'm doing that because I will post this on the blog, although there's not going to be a lot to post. Maybe some pictures. All right, so we've got this. So one of the things you can do about so you can leave it just the way it is, or you can right click and table view. You can reduce it to just the column names if you want. And then it looks like the others. All right. With any of these, you can do table view standard, and it gives you the data types. And you can edit them. And then table view column names. And again, the reason why we didn't do this from the beginning is that we are actually making these tables. We're not just diagramming them, which is what I think you should start with. All right, so I'm going to right-click and add another new table. But I am suggesting this is the way you should implement your Vinces. I think this the diagram is the easiest way to do it. So I am going to make this table to be sale detail. And I'm doing this somewhat on purpose so I can show you how to connect things. So I'm going to do sale detail ID. I'll make it an int. And I'll right click on it and set primary key. Yeah,
Can you look at me really quick?
sure. And if you want it to be identity, you can do that. And then let me take a look at that.
I actually do,
You said you tested it. Yeah, so that's good.
we got it in the welcome there.
Yeah, it was too. This one, this one. Yeah, let's not worry. I'll come and look at it again in a minute. All right, so I did sale detail ID. I want to do sale ID as an int also. And then I'll do product ID as an int. And I'll make both of those required. So I'm gonna, what I want to show you is if to make a link here, if I grab the key and drag to the product ID down there, it will pop up this thing to make it a foreign key. I'm going to do OK. This allows you to set some properties on the key, but generally I'm just going to say OK. and it creates a relation there. Same with the sale ID. If I drag here to the sale, and this one, it is important that you actually drop this over the top of the one that is the foreign key.
How did you grab it?
So let me cancel and cancel. You have to grab the edge. You have to actually grab the key. Hold the mouse down, drag, and then drop it over the field that it goes to. When you're here, you need to make sure that the tables and the fields are right. Because if all your keys are integers, it'll match with any key. But then that won't let you enter data if you got the wrong one. So sale ID, sale detail, sale ID. I do OK. I do OK. Again, the advantage of this is that you can just drag and drop your foreign keys. And then if I save this diagram, so I'm going to leave it as diagram 0, and it gives me this, so I'm going to say yes. If I refresh over here on tables, I have customer, product, sale, and sale detail. If you look at them, it has the foreign keys and the keys. So what you do in that diagram is written directly to the database once you save. So we still are. Right. No, let's try. Let's do the. I'll be there in a second. Say yes. And then and then right click. So do the same ID. No space. Make it primary key. Okay, we'll do just. Yeah, that's fine. So better than. Okay, okay, and then do customer ID. Okay, right, please do that. Let's just see. So I did it and refresh. I don't know why the sequence would refresh it. So did your customer say? Your SQL looked good. So yeah, this is complicated. It takes a while to get used to this kind of thing. Let me. Drag it and drop it over the top of the book. So
And then if you want to add
the first
Yeah, you can do whatever one.
and drop it right over the top of the product. So at the table number, it's actually just
No.
the typing, yeah.
So you can create the table in there. I will help you do some of these. So all you have to do is save
How did you even know those were the same?
So one of the things I'll show you next time, because we're about out, is how to enter data. And we can repeat any parts of this that you need, right? Because it's a lot. I will show you something that's kind of neat and not really relevant. It'll be the last thing. I'm going to go to my GitHub. So I'm going to do GitHub, and I'm going to do .com, and then I'm going to do /spcon. Whoops, I lost GitHub. GitHub.com, and then /spconger. So that's my GitHub site. And one of the things right up front is database schema. And I'm going to do community assist SQL. So this is what I was saying. I'm going to do this as raw. And then I'm going to copy this. And then here I'm going to do a new query. So I have all the SQL for all the making of the tables and everything. It's all really big. All the inserts into the tables. See if I can get to the top. It's hard to do in Zoom. Actually, let me unzoom a little. I'm not sure. There it is. All right, so it creates the database. See how it just create database? It's not easy to create a database. I'm going to use the database that we created. I'm going to create some different objects that need to be created first, and then I'm going to create all the tables and add all the data. And all I have to do is just execute that. Okay, so all of these things down here tell me that the data has been installed. Now let me go bigger. You guys don't have to do this because we're not using this database here. But if I right click on databases and refresh, I've now got Community Assist. It has all of these tables. And if I do a new query, I can do like select star from person. Am I in the right table though? That's a good question. No, because I'm not in the table. So I need to say use Community Assist. So I'll run that. And then if I say select star from person, it will work. And there will be all the people in there. So all the data, everything was captured just in a single script, which I have to find. I guess it's that one. You can look at the script if you want. There are other databases there, but the nice thing about SQL is that it's that easy to transfer a database. Now that isn't true if the database is big, right? This one has a couple hundred records in a table, you know. If you've got hundreds of thousands of records in a table, you can't transfer it with a script like this. Because it will, I have one that has 600,000 records per table. And when I tried to script it, it was many thousands of pages. And it fills up your RAM and crashes. So it only works for small databases to transfer this way. Although you can always transfer the structure of the database. It's the data that's a bit of a problem. So that's just to show you what you can do with the SQL. But what I would expect, and we don't have time to do it today, I'm not going to save that one. I think that the diagram is the easiest way to build the database. You know, if you don't know the SQL, because you can, you know, you can always just right-click, new table, give the table a name. I'm just going to leave it as OK. Add all the data types and the etc. And then you can create relations by just dragging. It's a little harder in the table view, like if you right-click and do new table. It's a little harder in that to do the relationships. It's doable, but I'll have to show you if you want to do it that way. Can I delete that table? Yeah, I don't want it saved. I just want it gone. Okay, so I got it good. So The other part, if you do it in the diagram, is it won't show up over here until you save. So next time, I'm hoping we can start building Vincent's in here from your diagrams. That being said, anything you need me to go over again next time, I will. And you can build it however you want. If you really want to try to learn the SQL, you're welcome to do that. My script is useful in that it can show you some of the SQL, but it has extra features in it because I actually generated a script. I'll show you this real quickly too. So we've got bakery, right? Bakery is what we've got over here. We did that. If I right click on bakery and go to tasks, there is a thing where you say generate scripts. And this is just a splash screen. So we want everything in the database, which is just the tables. There's no data, so it doesn't matter. I'm going to save to a new query window. All right, so finish. And what it did is it created a script for the database that we did, the bakery database. It has the create tables. It has a bunch of other stuff that you don't need. Let's zoom down. So it scripts a lot of defaults. Primary keys are always clustered, indexed by default. You don't have to write that. You don't have to do the DBO. You don't have to do the square brackets. You don't have to say set quoted identifier on. You don't have to do all this stuff on the database. Where you're creating the database, it basically goes through and all of those defaults. It says whether they're on or off. But that's by default anyway. You could just cut all those things out if you want. But you can script a database by just asking it to script it. All right. So I'm not going to save that. I might save this. We'll see. There is a video. I don't know how good it is. The latter part of the video is where I'm doing this stuff, so it's probably the more useful part. This is saved, I think. Let me save it. I will save this, or at least, do you guys want me to blog that? It's not much.
Yeah, could you?
I probably got better, could probably guide you to better places, but I think I'm done for the day. So if I go here, I'm going to stop the video.